Today, we are going deep inside a very special box to uncover one of the most powerful lung function tests out there, body plethysmography. Now, I know it sounds super complex, but it's a really fascinating tool that reveals secrets about your lungs that honestly, we just can't find out any other way. So let's get into it. Just let that sink in for a second. We spend so much time thinking about how much air we can breathe in and out, right? But what about the air that's always left behind? Turns out that little bit of leftover air holds some of the most critical clues to our lung health. And see, that's where the problem lies. Your standard lung test, spirometry, is a fantastic tool, but it has a massive blind spot. It's great at measuring the air you can move, but it's completely blind to the air that's still in your lungs after you've pushed every last bit out. To get that full picture, we've got to use a different kind of tool. So, here's the plan for our journey today. First, we're going to talk about that hidden volume of air. Then, we'll get into the box's really clever physics trick. We'll see how it measures your total lung size, figures out how hard you're actually working to breathe, and finally, we'll learn how to decode the cool visual signatures that different lung diseases leave behind. Okay, first things first. Let's get a handle on exactly what this mysterious hidden volume is that we're trying so hard to find. It's called the residual volume, or RV for short. And it's exactly what it sounds like. No matter how hard you squeeze and push to empty your lungs, this air is always left. And the amount of it, whether it's way too much or not enough, tells doctors so much about conditions like emphysema or fibrosis. Spirometry can't touch it, so we need a better way. And that is where this thing, the body plethysmograph, comes into play. Yeah, it kind of looks like an old school phone booth, right? But it's actually this incredibly sensitive piece of medical gear, and it's designed to solve this one very specific problem. So, how on earth does sitting inside a sealed box let us measure air that's trapped deep inside your lungs? Well, the answer is just a brilliant, beautiful application of some classic physics. It all comes down to something called Boyle's law. You probably learned this in high school chemistry. All it says is, if you have a sealed container of gas and you squeeze it, you make the volume smaller, the pressure goes up. And if you let it expand, the pressure goes down. It's that simple inverse relationship that is the engine driving this entire test. So picture this. You're sitting inside this sealed, airtight box. The moment you try to take a breath in, your chest expands. That expansion takes up space, right? It's literally squeezing the air inside the box into a slightly smaller volume. And just like Boyle's law says, less volume means higher pressure. And the machine is so sensitive, it can measure that tiny, tiny change in pressure. And this brings us to the secret sauce of the whole operation, something called shift volume. Okay, think about it like this. When you start to inhale, your chest expands instantly. But the air itself, it takes a split second to actually start flowing in and fill that space. So for a brief moment, your chest has gotten bigger, but the air hasn't caught up. That tiny lag, that little mismatch between chest movement and airflow, that is the shift volume. It's what actually compresses the air in the box, and it's the key variable this whole thing is designed to measure. Okay, so now that we get the clever trick, let's see how it's used in its first big application, figuring out the exact size of your lungs. This is done with something called the shutter maneuver. So you're in the box, you take a normal, relaxed breath out, and then a little shutter painlessly closes the breathing tube. You're then asked to just gently pant against that closed shutter. As your chest expands and contracts, the machine is doing two things at once. It's measuring the pressure change at your mouth and the pressure change in the box. By putting those two numbers together, it can calculate the total amount of air left in your lungs at that moment. And that value is called the functional residual capacity, or FRC. The logic here is actually really simple. Imagine you're trying to compress the air inside a giant scuba tank versus a tiny little bicycle pump. With the same amount of effort, you're going to create a much smaller pressure change in that big tank, right? Well, your lungs work the exact same way. If you have big lungs, a little panting effort creates a small pressure change at the mouth. If you have smaller lungs, that same effort creates a much bigger pressure change. And the machine uses that relationship to calculate your lung volume. It's so clever. And this is exactly why getting that FRC measurement is so critical. It's like the key that unlocks everything else. Once we know the FRC, we can combine it with a few simple breathing tests to figure out all the other important volumes. Your total lung capacity, that hidden residual volume we were looking for, your inspiratory capacity, the whole shebang. We finally have the complete picture of your lungs. But wait,
There's more. The box can do more than just measure lung size. It can also tell us how hard your body is working just to move air in and out. This is all about something called airway resistance. For this test, the shutter is opened back up, and you're asked to pant again, just shallowly and quickly. As you do that, the machine is now tracking two things in real time: how fast the air is actually flowing through the tube, and the shift volume your chest created to make that flow happen. And it plots that relationship on the screen, creating what's called a specific resistance loop.
Now, this next part is really, really important, and it can be a little confusing, so let's break it down. The loop we just mentioned directly measures something called specific airway resistance, or SRA. Think of SRA as the work of breathing. From that, we can calculate the true airway resistance, or RA. The huge difference is that SRA takes your lung size into account. See, someone with smaller lungs will naturally have higher resistance, but their work of breathing, their SRA, might be totally normal for their size.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. This quote from a 2011 paper in Respiratory Medicine puts it perfectly. It says that SRW is basically the work your body has to do by changing its volume just to get air moving. It's not just about how narrow your airways are, it's about the actual effort involved. Okay, last section. Let's look at the shapes of those loops we were talking about. Because it turns out, in this case, a picture really is worth 1,000 words. You see, that loop that gets traced on the screen during the panting isn't just a bunch of random data points. It's a visual signature of your lungs. It's like a fingerprint. Different kinds of lung problems will actually bend and distort that loop in very specific, very recognizable ways, giving doctors an instant visual clue about what might be going on. So check this out. For a normal, healthy person, the loop is really thin, narrow, and almost perfectly vertical. It means it takes very little work to move air. But for someone with an obstructive disease like COPD or asthma, that loop gets wide and flat, especially on the exhale, showing it takes a ton of work. With restrictive diseases like fibrosis, the loop might actually look pretty normal because resistance isn't the problem, the small lung volume is. And for something really specific like a fixed blockage in your windpipe, the loop gets flattened on both the top and the bottom, creating this really distinct box shape. It's just an incredibly powerful diagnostic tool. All right, so let's tie this all together. At the end of the day, body plethysmography is what lets us find that hidden lung volume that other tests just can't see. It pulls this off using the elegant physics of Boyle's law and this really clever idea of shift volume. It gives us a much deeper understanding of breathing by separating the work of breathing from pure resistance. And maybe coolest of all, it draws a picture that can help diagnose a disease almost at a glance. It's just a great reminder that sometimes the biggest answers aren't found by looking harder, but just by looking at the problem from a totally different angle. In this case, from inside a box. It really makes you wonder, right? What other hidden stories are our bodies just waiting to tell us, if we can only find the right way to listen?